What interesting news we have today. Dr. Seuss getting cancelled, discarded like some icky person of the past.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
And now, I also know from The Guardian that a non-binary, very left-leaning oriented person was also cancelled. Because the people in power want to dismantle everything. No, seriously, it's like they're mad with power, like they're drunk with it. They're raging the attack on the stone men. Yes, those evil statues with aura of the past. They need to be dismantled. Did you notice that no Marxist ever gets dismantled? Even though like some of them were racist, even though like some of them were homophobic, none of them ever gets dismantled. It's almost like it's not a war in order to take out racism or bad people or bad values. No, it's almost like trying to reset the values of a society that's built on freedom and liberty and replace them with values that's obeying authority, unquestionable. The past doesn't matter anymore. Build back better. But before building back, you need to dismantle. Okay, now, here's the thing. I'll talk about Dr. Seuss later on, and I'll explain the reasoning why he needed to be dismantled. But before that, I need to talk about something else that is shocking people. Like, they don't understand. And the reason they don't understand is because a lot of people live in the now. Very few people live in the future to understand, like, okay, if you're going to have this ideology, if these are the principles and these are the values you go forward with, we can predict where you're going to arrive. Because one thing leads from another. So, what is the controversy here? Apparently, a Dutch translator, which happens to be non-binary and also left-leaning, as I understand it, wanted to translate the work of a black woman poet. And this caused uproar from a couple of Ashert activists. It's like, how can a white person, okay, like how would the universe allow for a Caucasian to translate the work of a person of color? Okay, how can the peasantry ever understand the words of the nobility? No, we cannot allow this, right? And a lot of progressive people who read this article, they're shocked. They're like, whoa, what do you mean? It's simple. It's in the ideology. It's built in, like it's working as intended. It's a feature, not a bug, okay? Because a lot of people just read the media and take their opinions. They don't actually go to the academic literature in order to understand what's being said there. So they are shocked. They're taken aback. They're like, well, this snuck up on me from nowhere. Now, the academic literature isn't a new one, despite the fact that it's called progressive. It's a very old one. You probably heard about it. When I will describe to you, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. And you can even find it in academic books that are being promoted. So, the worldview of the progressive mindset is to spread the human race based on different factions of people. And it's not spread by countries or ethnicities. It's spread based on race and sexual orientation. So you have like, you don't have Americans anymore, okay? You have Caucasian Americans, you got Asian Americans, you got black people, right? And all of these factions and groups are struggling for power. Like there's power dynamics going into these groups. So the free-thinking individual is completely abolished. You are not a person with your own life experiences and your own thoughts and ambitions and goals. No, you're a pawn to the faction that you belong to. And there are people in academia which dictate what the faction that you belong to is interested in pursuing and is interested in ambition. So this is why they freak out when they see someone like Kanye West wanting to be a conservative. Because like he is part of this faction that is only supposed to be Democrat. It's only supposed to be progressive. That they're not allowed by the powers that be to be conservatives. Like that is the ideology that these people are promoting, okay? Now, one of the branches of this ideology, a subsection, is called post-colonial studies. And in their view, the world was tainted years ago by Europeans. they do not admit that there were different factions of Europeans, like the Spanish, the British. No. It's like all of them are lumped in together, and all of them work tirelessly in order to, I guess, like taint the earth wherever they went. And today, you cannot achieve harmony. You cannot achieve like the equity amongst the different factions unless you undo the evil, the taint that was done in the past. Okay, so this is what they call decolonization. And if you think this is crazy up till now, just give it a little bit more time till we actually get to the meat of the issue, okay? Because their worldview, as I mentioned, like separates the earth based on different arbitrary characteristics, which causes people to be in factions. And they view that if I, for example, were to write something or to invent something, then it would, my invention or my writing wouldn't be my intellectual property. It would be the intellectual property of my entire faction, okay, which would be like white people or something like that. And it goes the same for other races. So if a black person were to invent something, it's not his property, it's like the whole culture. Okay, so this is why they create the idea of cultural appropriation. Because now it's like the food that comes from the kitchen of an Asian person belongs to the Asian people. And if I, a white person, would want to reproduce that food, I would be guilty of cultural appropriation. And as you think it's funny and you think it's harmless and stuff like that, there have been people fired for culturally appropriating. There were people harassed on social media for cultural appropriation. There were people losing their business for making burritos. All right? Like, these are individuals that believe into this nonsense that are cult-like in nature, okay? Because you cannot have like sane individuals that partake into this. In order for this absurdity to exist, you need to have people that are very prone to aggressive behavior so that they shut down dissent, that normal people do not belong there. Like the moment you start questioning or asking stuff, boom, you're gone. That's how this ideology exists. You don't see comment sections on The Guardian, do you? You don't see comment sections where the people are promoting these ideologies, and at university they have safe spaces where you wouldn't be even able to attend if you start questioning this ideology. And I think it's created to be absurd by nature. Like, it's meant to be absurd as a litmus test to see the people who speak out against it, because they're the people that they don't need. All right, now, if you are partaking into this worldview, that every single culture is like the intellectual proprietor of works of arts and hairstyles, and dress codes, and whatever nonsense you want, then you have the equity, right? Which is like when one culture has just way too much at the expense of the others. And this is like why it's okay, for example, if you take a white character like Superman and you make it black, or you take a white character like something, and they don't get offended because of that, because they already view that this culture has too much. So it's okay if they appropriate certain things, but the opposite isn't okay. So if, for example, you look at Princess Jasmine, there was an uproar because she wasn't of Agrabah descent, because she was half English and half Indian, and apparently that's not what Agrabah desires. So it doesn't work both ways. It's not a two-way street. It's like one culture has to constantly give until like the balance of the factions becomes it's crazy. Like, don't look at, I'm not the one coming up with this shit. I'm just trying to explain it to you, okay? Oh my god. Like, people would actually think that this is what I believe. Holy shit. So this is why you get this crap, okay? Like, this is why you get a non-binary left-leaning person getting canceled, because they wanted to translate the works of a black woman. Like, that is not their place. That is not their faction that is supposed to do this. Okay, now they call it representation, but in reality it's not like a parliament that represents anyone. You know, if I hire a person to translate a book, no one from that person's faction benefits besides the person itself. It makes perfect sense, right? But no, like, they view it that somehow you're empowering the entire faction. Like, they view the fact, okay, let's take the Rockefellers as bankers, okay? Like, that's a position of power. Like, they have the power to influence politicians. They have the power to have a say in how the nation is being ruled. Well, they view it that somehow it benefits me that they're in power. In my opinion, the Rockefellers being in power benefits the Rockefellers. Okay? That's a normal mindset. Like, it benefits the actual person that is having that position of power. It doesn't benefit me in any way. You know, because Joe Biden is the president of the United States and he is a straight cisgender white man, it doesn't benefit straight cisgender white people. Because, like, normal politics don't function that way. And they even, like, pointed out, it's like when Obama was president, they would say, well, it doesn't benefit black people. It's like, okay, yeah, normal, it benefits Obama. And, of course, you know, his circle of interest, like the people gravitating around him and the people that gave him money in order for him to become president, then they expect something in return. That's the normal way politics work. But the worldview of these is completely cuckoo. And because it's completely cuckoo, they are very easy to manipulate. Like, for example, when a person asked Biden, it's like, how are you going to help small businesses? He's like, oh, you need to take into account that we have a woman, a female being as the Treasury Secretary or whatever. And it's like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, for a normal person, that doesn't make sense. But for a person that's into this worldview, it's like, okay, because she's a woman, she must care about womanhood and her faction, so she has a duty towards other women. And, like, life doesn't work this way, sweetheart. Okay? So, yeah, I mean, if you look at this article, this person wanted to do the translation, but this person was like, no. It's like, what we need to translate a work is a spoken word artist, young, female, and unapologetically black. So you can't have anything but, okay? You can't have a non-binary person. You need a female person because the writer was a woman. And you need an unapologetically black person to do the translation because that's what the author is. Like, that's the faction, okay? So when you call out a social justice activist who's like, okay, but why aren't you upset about Superman being black, but you're absolutely livid about Jasmine because she's not from Agrabah, or that lady from Doctor Strange because she's not an Asian? Like, why are you upset? Why do you care about these? Like, in one situation you really care about the ethnicity of an actor, in another situation you don't give a shit and you actually think it's a good thing. They're not being hypocrites when they're doing this, okay? Because from their worldview, as I mentioned, like, one faction has way too much. So it's fine if they take things from the culture that has way too much. And this is all funny and amusing until they start going after math. And then you realize that, okay, that's an actual problem. Because you see, the main issue here, most authoritarians, and I'm talking this from experience, like what the communists in my country wanted and other authoritarians around the world, what they want is for people to be stupid and dumb so they cannot challenge power. Now, in 2021, education is an important aspect because you can use it to indoctrinate people into your ideology. So it's a good thing. But at the same time, it's a dangerous thing because if it's not controlled properly, then you can have, like, people coming up with their own ideas and thinking for themselves, which is the last thing that an authoritarian wants. Right? That's why you have fact checkers and you don't have people being encouraged to check for themselves and know how to fact check. Okay? Because if there's an actual science, if it's an art form of fact checking, why aren't they spreading it around the population? Like, why are they vaccinating the population against misinformation by teaching them how enlightened people like Snopes and the Washington Post fact checks? Like, why not have the school of fact checking that everyone should take? They don't want that, right? Because what they want is gatekeeping. Like, they want institutions that tell people how to think, not people thinking for themselves. So what they do then is that they can't get rid of education because, as I mentioned, they like it. And it's also ingrained in our culture, in our way of life that, you know, people should get an education. It's a human right now. So what they can do instead is to bombard useless bullshit that kids have to learn. So instead of learning about, you know, how to write a resume, how to go for a job interview, how to advance in a career, how to negotiate a better wage, how to do your taxes, how to start a business, like actual things that are concrete, useful things, no, they're going to give you the lecture about gender studies and about critical race theory and about, you know, like nonsense that you can't use in the real world in order to apply a trade. So that's what they're doing. Like, they're destroying the knowledge that people learn at school, and instead they're replacing it with absolute horseshit that doesn't serve anyone, okay? It's a waste of time, and it turns people's brain into mush. Meanwhile, the elites, the rich people, they don't go to public schools, okay? They go to private schools, and the private schools aren't going to tell them about decolonizing math. No, the private schools are going to teach them proper math. Like, the private schools are going to teach them how to think for themselves, how to conduct themselves in society, how to do the essential things, okay? And then you now have the class division. Then you have the elites that can afford an education, and the poor people that are going to get a dumb education. But they're all getting educated, okay? You can't complain that the society isn't educating people, now can you? Everyone gets an education, right? It's just that some people get a better education than others, and this is what it's all about. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.